It's been said that sunlight is the best disinfectant, so today we shine a light on one of the darkest of American conspiracies, Building 7 of the World Trade Center. Most of you probably don't even know of it. What happened on that infamous day? What really happened to World Trade Center Building 7? Let's go to my vigilant producer, Alex Logan, in the command center with our first story, Building 7, this intriguing building that most Americans don't even know about, do they, Alex?
They don't, and the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth have tried to turn that around. They have funded a 15-second ad to be broadcast on 300 TV screens in Toronto's subway stations until April 1st, promoting its belief that the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 on September 11th, 2001 was due to a controlled demolition. The group of 2,100 architects and engineers has signed a petition calling for an independent investigation into the building's demise. Why now, Jesse? September 11th was almost 13 years ago, and is an investigation still relevant today?
Absolutely it is, Alex, but we're going to back up first. We all know that the two big World Trade Centers, 1 and 2, were each struck by airplanes, and within a matter of a couple of hours, they both collapsed at free fall speed to the ground. And they didn't blame it on the planes. Their official thing was the fire, that it heated up so much that it caused these big, huge skyscrapers to literally disappear and fall to the ground as dust. Now, we all saw that. What we didn't see, and here's the education for today, we didn't see building number 7. When I was doing Conspiracy Theory, the show, we got a tape of a woman, a reporter with the BBC, British Broadcasting Company, who did a live report that day from 9/11 at 4:50 in the afternoon. Here's what her report was that day: that a third building that was not struck by any aircraft collapsed to the ground in 7 seconds. Now, it was not hit by a plane, so they said fire caused it. Well, what the hell did they build this building out of? Cardboard? And you know what the fun part about this whole report was? The entire time she's reporting it, the building's standing behind her. It hasn't fallen yet. We went to the BBC. We wanted to interview her to ask her who gave her this information this building had collapsed, and didn't she know it was right behind her? They wouldn't talk to us. The 9/11 Commission, their big report, didn't even cover it.
You are correct about Jane Stanley. She was the BBC reporter who made that announcement 26 minutes earlier than the building fell. And she was interviewed years later. She said it's just very unfortunate that this whole conspiracy, this kind of ridiculous situation, has grown out of what is a very small and honest mistake.
What? A small and honest mistake? How could it be a mistake to report a building fell before it did?
She and the BBC said that they were given misinformation, that the building, they had heard that the building had fallen when there were still reports that the building was going to fall.
And that doesn't make a little light go off and say, oops, somebody screwed up and let the cat out of the bag early? How did they know the building was going to fall?
That's probably true because, you know, the BBC anchorman at the time, Phil Hayton, he was the one who threw to Jane Stanley. When he was interviewed about the subject, he said, "I sense that you think there's a conspiracy here, but you may be right."
Yeah, you're darn right we're right. How could they know a half hour ahead of time this building was going to the ground in 7 seconds?
Well, let's get back to this story about the architects and engineers for 9/11, and we'll get to to the NIST's report on the free fall. All right, so Jesse, so this group of 2,100 architects and engineers, they've signed a petition calling for an independent investigation into the building's demise. One of the group's architects, Richard Gage, said, "What we're trying to do is raise a red flag. We think that the families of the victims deserve justice. We're not here trying to upset anybody." Gage also mentioned that he prefers not to be labeled a truther, but rather a patriotic American sounding the alarm. Do you think the term truther has become a dirty word? Do you take offense to the word?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that they could morph the word today, truth, into being bad. Snowden told the truth, bad. Bradley Manning told the truth, Bad. Building 7 falls to the ground. The truth. Bad. It used to be you were insulted if you were called a liar. But today, you're called a truther. So truther is now morphed and taken over for liar? We're in bad shape.
Well, another member of the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Frankie Gotts, insisted that we're not conspiracy theorists. We don't know who the conspirators are. So, although they aren't ready to name names, Governor, do you have any of your own suspects in this?
No, I certainly don't, but the thing is, they're playing candy ass here. The Huffington Post. For years, Arianna Huffington wanted me to write for them. So I finally did, and guess what I wrote about? I wrote about how the architects and engineers gathered in St. Louis, and thousands of them signed a petition demanding a new investigation of 9/11 because it was their expert opinion that what we were told was not true, that it couldn't have happened like that. Huffington Post posted it for an hour, then they pulled it and said, we don't do conspiracy theories here. This wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was an actual event that happened, the meeting of these architects. It just wasn't covered by mainstream media, and I felt it should have been.
Let's discuss what we do know about Building 7 of the World Trade Center. It's a 47-story, 610-foot tall building. It opened on March 1987 as the 7th and final structure of the World Trade Center complex. At the time of its collapse, the Wall Street investment group Solomon Smith Barney was by far the largest tenant in the building, occupying floors 28 through 45. Other occupants included Hartford Insurance Group, American Express Bank International, the United States Secret Service, the New York City Office of Emergency Management, as well as the Department of Defense and CIA, who shared the 25th floor with the IRS. Governor, these are all major companies and principal governmental institutions. Wouldn't they easily be able to get to the bottom of what really happened?
Yeah, but see, that building was brought down on purpose. And the thing we have to realize is what was the purpose to bring it down? Because a 47-story steel-structured building with a couple of minor little fires in it does not do an instantaneous 7-second collapse. And it's an insult to my intelligence. Having been trained as a Navy frogman, our name is called the Underwater Demolition Teams. So unfortunately, I know how to blow things up. And in the case of World Trade Center Building 7, clearly the way it fell, they cared about collateral damage. They wanted it dropped in its own footprint. And the only way that happens is by a controlled demolition of some sort. Don't look at me and say, Jesse Ventura, you're a big dumb fool. Because that's what you're telling me when you give me a bullshit answer like that.
Well, the National Institute of Standards and Technology investigated the collapse and determined that debris from World Trade Center 1, which was 370 feet to the south, ignited fires on at least 10 floors in the building at its south and west faces. They said that the primary and backup water supply to the sprinkler systems relied on the city's water supply. Those lines were damaged by the collapse of towers 1 and 2. Heat from uncontrolled fires caused thermal expansion of the steel beams on the lower floors, damaging the floor framing on multiple floors. Eventually, a displaced girder caused floor 13 to collapse, beginning a cascade of floor failures down to the 5th floor.
How can that be when the fires were located in specific little spots? How could it be a uniform collapse? How could all the metal be hot enough to collapse all at the same time? That is bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
Well, in an issue of Popular Mechanics that debunked a number of 9/11 conspiracies, or so they thought, the lead investigator of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Shyam Sunder, told the magazine, on about a third of the face to the center and to the bottom of World Trade Center 7, approximately 10 stories, about 25% of the depth of the building was scooped out as a result of World Trade Center 1's collapse. It's an interesting fact that is usually left out of the argument. Isn't this enough evidence to support the NIST's theory?
No, but the point is, that building was 300 and some feet away from 1 and 2. Nothing that big from 1 and 2 hit the ground. It was all turned to dust. Remember when they told you the bullshit about they took all the steel and shipped it to China?
I do.
You remember that, Alex?
I do remember
I'd
that.
like to see a bill of lading for it. Nobody saw any ship, no one's identified a ship, and no one's ever taken responsibility for where did all this stuff allegedly go. It didn't go anywhere. It was dustified. It was turned into dust. There weren't that many big beams to carry out of there. I was there. I walked the ground with Governor Pataki shortly after it happened. Come on.
Although the NIST did consider the controlled demolition aspect, but determined that no blast sounds were heard on the audio track recordings during the collapse of World Trade Center 7 or reported by witness. A blast able to drop World Trade Center 7 would have resulted in a sound level of 130 to 140 decibels, which is consistent with a gunshot blast standing next to a jet plane engine, or more than 10 times louder than being in front of speakers at a rock concert.
Really? Now let me counter that and say, how many other buildings in the world have fallen skyscrapers simply from fire alone?
None have. None from a fire like this.
None. That's right, none. How come they're not warning us? How come today, when you walk into any skyscraper, any big building throughout America, why isn't there a warning sign that says, if this building catches on fire, it could uniformly collapse?
A counterpoint to that, fires in high-rise buildings typically have a single point of origin on a single floor, whereas the fires in World Trade Center 7 likely had a single point of origin on 10 floors. And fires in other high-rise buildings were due to isolated
You're
events.
going to tell me, Alex, if there's 10 couches burning on 10 different floors, the building's going to uniformly collapse?
Not necessarily. I'm just quoting what the NIST says.
Yeah, well, they're full of shit. They're there to rubber stamp a story the government don't want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about Building 7. That's why the 9/11 Commission didn't bother with it, because it don't add up, Alex.
So the last thing I'll ask you is, you are in support of another investigation, correct?
Absolutely. I'm in support of an investigation. There hasn't been one yet. When they form these commissions, like the Warren Commission and the 9/11 Commission, they are there simply to rubber stamp the government's official position. They are not there to investigate. They've already got a predetermined conclusion, and they don't let anything stray from that, and they won't entertain any other evidence that doesn't formulate to that conclusion. That is not an investigation. When you do an investigation, you simply gather facts and you allow the facts to take you to a conclusion. Do you still think it was a controlled demolition, or do you believe the NIST? Keep our conversation going at the site below. Tweet, email, and call me with your thoughts. And as always, stay vigilant, pay attention, and don't believe bullshit.